What's up, guys? I have been riding the new 2021 Stumpjumper Alloy for about a month now, so I'm going to call this an initial review. I'm going to walk through my observations of the bike, some of the upgrades that I've done. We'll give you some weights to supplement a weight video that I did that I'll link to in the video, but we're just going to go through initial impressions and kind of give you an idea of what you can expect from this bike. Let's do a quick walk around of the bike just to understand the spec. So you've got a Butcher grid in the front as a tire that's going to be a 29 2.3, and then you've got a Purgatory in the back which is going to be also a 29. I talked about this in my weight video, but this is just a really aggressive tire. So I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm going to put a different tire combination on this bike. I talked about these tires in my weight video, which I'll link to, but this is just a super aggressive tire. So I think there's some weight savings to be had in these tires by going to a little bit less aggressive tire. I think you might want something like this if you're doing a lot of downhill. It's really good for climbing, but you can probably go a little less aggressive if you want to pick up some weight savings. Now let's talk suspension. So you've got a RockShox 35 Silver, which is 140 mil in the front, and then on the frame you've got a X Fusion, which is 130. So you got 140 and 130, which is a really nice combination for a trail bike. What I would tell you is this is adjustable. It's got the lockout, the rebound, and it's got this so you can adjust your sag. No sag adjustment on the front fork. You've got to go off of, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little chart here that tells you what your weight is, depending on your weight, what to set the fork at. So I'm at about 160, 65 pounds on a good day, and I've got 100 pounds of pressure in this, 100 PSI in this front fork, and then this is just adjusted based on sag. That's your suspension on this bike. I'll tell you, it's pretty good. I'm still kind of wearing this in, and we'll see. Verdict's still out on the rear shock. I'm trying different combos of the pressure and the lockout and the rebound on that. We'll see where we land on Verdict on the suspension, but initial impressions, pretty good. So here on your front shock, your rebound on this, it's a little cheap. It's plastic. You can't really tell from the video, but this is a little plastic cap. It's got about three. It's got about 3 clicks of adjustment on it. The adjustment on my 2014 was aluminum, and I think the shock on my 2014, it was a comp, but aluminum model, but I think a little better components on the 2014. A little disappointed in that. It feels like it just might break off if you ding it or hit it on a rock. I did want to mention this because I've seen a lot of confusion online. On your rear suspension, it clearly says on the website it has flip chip technology, and it does, but if you look for it here and expect to see it here on the yoke like you see on some of the higher end models, you're not going to find it. And when I first got the bike, I took this apart looking for the flip chip. I looked underneath, I disassembled the shock. I was kind of confused by it. There just wasn't a lot of information. What I figured out was the flip chip on the Alloy is actually here, and I did a whole video on how to flip that so that you can change your geometry. Change in geometry, you get it. The big things are you get a 7 mil change in your bottom bracket height, and then you get about a 1/2 degree change in your seat angle and your head tube angle. And compared to my 2014 Stumpjumper, this is way more slack. It's way more stretched out. It's got a really nice geometry to it. So it's nice and stretched out, feels super stable. It's got a really nice geometry to it. Just need to work on the weight a little bit. Let's talk brakes. You got a 200 rotor in the front and a 180 in the back. Stock brakes on this thing, I'll show them to you in a second, were not good. I upgraded to the XTs about 4 or 5 days after I got the bike. If you were just riding around your neighborhood, stock brakes might be okay. If you're doing trail riding of any serious nature, you're gonna wanna upgrade your brakes. So here's your stock brakes. This is a Tektro Gemini SL. It's got a ceramic pad. It's a 1-piston brake on front and back. They're pretty light, but the stopping power between this and the Shimano XT is just night and day. Let's talk drivetrain. So the drivetrain on this, it comes with a SRAM spline drivetrain on it, in a SRAM 1x12 drivetrain. My upgrades that I've done on this is I took this to the Dub system and I got rid of the micro spline. I did a oval, absolute black oval chainring, GX cranks, and then I left the back end of the bike just like it was. And this is one of the beautiful things about the SRAM drivetrain is they're interchangeable. So I've got a GX and then this is probably a SX rear cassette, but they all work together. So I didn't touch the back end of the drivetrain at all. I just focused on reducing the weight of the SRAM spline and going to the Dub with the GX cranks. And I got my Shimano's XT pedals on here, or Shimano pedal on here. Here is your factory install crankset and bottom bracket. And I covered this again, I covered it in my weight video, but you can see you're sitting at 2.3 pounds on this guy. I got a weight savings of 1 pound by going to the Dub bottom bracket with the GX crank. Pound, huge weight savings. Let's talk about the paint on this bike. I've got a ride wrap. I'll link to it in the video description, but I've got a ride wrap on it. And if you can see, it's got a really, really nice flat finish on it. You can see where the ride wrap starts right here. It's pretty much covering the majority of the bike, but man, this thing is cool looking when you, before I covered it. This is a matte finish ride wrap, so it's got a little bit of shine to it. I wish it was like a little bit better at showing the factory finish on the bike, because it's really, really cool matte black and it just looks awesome. Everything's pretty blacked out on this bike, so they did a really good job of blacking out the components. It just looks really, really cool. Here's what I'll tell you. More than one of you guys have told me that the finish on this is super soft. I'm glad I did the ride wrap. I've already got, I noticed right here, I've got a chip just from the handful of rides that I've done. It hit this ride wrap, but it peeled off and chipped the paint right there. And I don't think that's from the crankset. I'm pretty sure it's not. I think I got dinged with a rock right there, but really cool finish. I'm just afraid it's a little bit soft. I know sometimes these will harden up as they age a little bit. So I'm hoping that's the case with this and that it's not a paint flaw. Hoping this paint will harden up, but I've got it pretty well covered. I've got some protection on the shocks. You can see I've already got a little ding there from the first ride. But this ride wrap is pretty cool. It takes about 2 hours to put on, but pretty cool product, really, really good fit. So I highly recommend that. Specialized grips on this. They're super thin. I like super thin grips. I don't like a thick, soft grip. I had a little bit of hand pain when I moved from my 2014 Stumpjumper to this bike. I think it's related to the position my hands are in, which is going to be solved by a riser bar. But I like these grips. They're super thin, and if you like that, you're going to like these. If you like something that's thick and soft, you're probably going to want to change those out. Rims are Specialized, and I think this has 32 points of engagement. And the rims are tubeless ready, tires are tubeless ready. I pulled my tubes out, did the tubeless conversion. I'll link to the products I used for that, including the valve stems and the sealant and all of that to do the conversion. And I'll actually make a video when I get my new tires in. We'll get this guy converted over to a new tire combination, and I'll show you how I do the tubeless if you guys want to see that. So a month in, what are my impressions of this bike? The weight is an issue for me. I got to manage that down a little bit, and I got to get used to it. I'm going from 29.4 pounds on my 2014 to 35.4 on this bike. So handful of upgrades to do to manage that weight down. But I will tell you, I do like the geometry. It climbs like crazy. I feel so stable, and I can hold a line on this bike climbing in a way that I just don't feel like I could do with the geometry on my other bike. When I get into a really technical climb, this bike does great. It's a little more slack, it's a little longer, it feels super stable. I just want to get that weight down. And then there's a handful of upgrades between the tire combination. I feel like the front shock, it's a little bit cheap on some of the components and the rebound adjustment. I hope it's durable and I hope it holds up. We'll see how that goes. With the upgrade on the brakes, the stopping power is good. I feel comfortable with that. The factory brakes, you got to upgrade those unless you're just riding around the neighborhood or cruising around neighborhood trails. If you're doing any serious kind of trail riding, you're going to have to plan for that upgrade. So I did the Shimano XTs. I'll link to those. And I'll go ahead and do a more long-term review. These are my initial impressions a month in. Sometimes it takes a while to work into a new bike and kind of get used to it. It takes a little time, so we'll see where we land. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for tuning in.